Representing the applicants, Advocate Gqeberha argued that the Mineral Resources Minister was aware that the seismic survey is not a sustainable development and will harm marine life. He says Shell also admitted that in the first year, the locals would not benefit from the exploration as the job requires highly skilled personnel and the machinery used is not available locally, and that limited jobs for locals would be available later. The applicants also argued that the survey will negatively affect marine life. Gqeberha says the report Shell relied on to mitigate harm on marine life was conducted in 2013 before the exploration rights license were granted. Since then, Shell has renewed the license twice, and Gqeberha argues that science evolves. He says Shell was never granted the environmental authority to conduct the exploration of oil and gas.
What they did get was an environmental management plan, and they say that is the same as environmental authorization. So they say even though they didn't get the specific EA, what they did do is enough. Now, the applicants say the law is clear that they're not the same, and for good reason. An EA requires a lot more before exploration like this can happen.
The applicants say they were never properly consulted. The notice for consultation was only published in 4 newspapers which do not circulate in the area. The notices were also published in English and Afrikaans only, despite Xhosa being the primary language of the majority of affected people. Shell will now respond with its opposing arguments. The matter has been set down until Wednesday. Gqeberha for SABC News in Gqeberha.
Gqeberha has an update for us on this story, and a very good morning to you, Gqeberha. What's happening this morning?
Good morning, Desiree, and also to your viewers. Today, as you've listened to that package, today we're expecting the respondent to actually table their arguments to what Advocate Gqeberha said about, if you listen to that package, in his head of arguments, there are 3 issues that actually came up from Advocate Gqeberha. One thing that he was arguing about is that Shell did not get the environmental authorization to actually conduct the exploration of the Wild Coast. Instead, they got what they call environmental management, which is actually totally different from the environmental authority, which is supposed to be granted by the Department of Environmental Affairs. And secondly, another issue that he talked about, that he spent a lot of time arguing in court, that there was never any proper consultation with the people that most of them are going to be affected by the exploration, that the way that the company that was outsourced by Shell to actually conduct the public hearings, they did not follow the regulatory framework that is supposed to be followed when we actually going to conduct such a project such as this exploration, saying that the notice informing the resident about this exploration was actually published in 4 newspapers in the province. 3 of those newspapers are provincial newspapers, which actually do not even circulate to the area that the people that are going to be affected by this exploration there. And secondly, even the language that was used in the notice, it's technical language, it's a lot of jargon. In order to understand that notice, you'll have to have an advanced knowledge of geography. And thirdly, also the language that was used to publish those notices, it was English and also Afrikaans, whereas most of the people that are residing in those areas where the exploration is going to take place, most of them, they actually speak Xhosa, and some of them are illiterate. They can't even write or read English. So that was the main arguments that were raised by Advocate Gqeberha yesterday. And lastly, another argument is the issue of the marine life, saying that the minister actually granted this license right, knowing very well that the marine life will be harmed, but at the expense of that, the community is not going to benefit anything there, because the job to actually explore, to get under the sea, it requires a highly skilled personnel. Even the machinery that is used is not available in South Africa. It will have to be imported outside of the country. So the people that are residing in those areas, they do not have any knowledge of utilizing those machinery. They will need to be trained. The jobs will only be available later on, probably in the next year when the project has started. But although that the arguments were going on inside the court yesterday, there was also a lot of activities outside the court where we saw a number of environmental organizations, including civic organization and small-scale fishermen also protesting outside here. By joining me now in this conversation, I've got one of the applicants, Zukulu. Sir, thank you so much for your time. Just tell us the reason for you opposing this exploration of the Wild Coast.
Thank you. There are various reasons and numerous reasons actually for the reasons why we're opposed to this. As you already mentioned in your introduction, one major one is the fact that the government doesn't want to hear the views of the coastal communities. As people who are dependent on the ocean for livelihood, coastal communities have got to be heard given a time. So the fact that they were not consulted is even more worrying, the trend which the minister has taken in terms of going from one kingdom to the other, again not talking to the actual people who would be directly affected by this seismic exploration. And more so, even when the oil and gas is found, the people whose lives will be impacted negatively are the coastal communities who are dependent on the ocean. If, for instance, we take one thing, of course, the laws of this country, the constitution, the legislation requires that the government shall, if they want to do anything, they need to talk to the people. And that's the process that would give them an environmental authorization, allowing a proper public participation process to take place. But again, when you look at what the minister is doing now, going from one kingdom to the other, talking to traditional leaders, also raises serious concerns about the commitment of our government to talk to the people on the ground. We all know, and Honorable Minister Mandashe is an African. He knows that Inkosi Ngabantu, traditional leaders are not supposed to make decisions on behalf of the people. It is the other way around. It's the people who sit and discuss and give the mandate to the traditional leader. For instance, if you look at the article that came after the consultation with the Nyandeni kingdom under King Damase, what was said there, the traditional leaders, after Mr. Mandashe convinced them, they said, only if they would allow this, if it's going to benefit the rural people. Of course, Mr. Mandashe said, yes, it will, but how? How is it going to benefit? They say creating jobs, but the reality is that allowing our ocean to be drilled for oil is going to impact negatively. We know this because all the places, the areas where these companies like Shell are drilling for oil, the ocean gets polluted. The people, you have looked, there's been a number of articles published by people from Ogoniland in the Niger Delta in Nigeria who were raising concerns about how they can no longer fish, they can no longer cultivate the crops due to the oil spills. We have seen, for instance, last year a court case where Shell was taken to court there for them to pay compensation to the people of Ogoniland. And Shell appealed that, and they were given so many billions to pay, and they appealed that, which again tells you and shows you that these multinational corporations like Shell have got no interest of the protection of the environment and the livelihoods of those people. When a big corporate, which was said to have made so much profit recently, but is refusing to pay a settlement that has been declared by a court of law, they want to, that says a lot. So for us to be talking today about this ocean in the Wild Coast being handed over on a golden platter to multinational corporations to explore for oil and gas, disregarding the rights of the local communities who are dependent on the ocean, disregarding the spiritual rights of the people who use the ocean. So disregarding the whole tourism industry, which is dependent on our shoreline. So there's the whole lot at stake. But for me, one of the major, at international level, which is where Shell features in, is the question of climate change. We are at the point where the IPCC report that came out this year in April about the mitigation has made it very clear that we are left with only 30 months to abandon fossil fuels. And our country, Shell as well, they were part of the recent conference in November in Glasgow, where they were signing and were talking about how to cut down the carbon emission. But a month later, they turn around, they come here, they want to explore for oil and gas. What kind of contradiction is that? We have seen again in the recent floods in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal that when these severe storms that are perpetuated by climate change occur, mainly the poor people suffer the most. The most vulnerable are the poor people. So now allowing our governments and these multinational corporations who are driven by profiteering to continue to pollute and also to continue to emit more carbon dioxide into the air is mainly detrimental to their livelihoods and to the lives of the poor people. We cannot allow that. Our constitutional right is at stake here. Our right to a safe and healthy environment, as guaranteed by the Constitution, is very critical. So we are coming to court to challenge this, because in whatever angle you look at it, it is wrong, it is illegal, it's not supposed to be allowed to go ahead. So we come to court because our government is not willing to listen to us. Had Mr. Mantashe been willing to listen to the coastal communities, he would not have run to meet the kings and the traditional leaders. He would have gone directly to the coastal community. This court case here is being spearheaded by coastal communities, by fisher folks who are dependent on the ocean and are raising their objection. And instead of the government, our government, to listen to the objections and to meet the people and hear the people out, instead the government goes to court supporting Shell that this must go ahead.
I don't know if you have listened to the Minister of Mineral Resources, Gqeberha, when actually he's here in the Eastern Cape, where in his capacity as the chairperson of the ANC, he's been saying that a lot of people that are opposed to this exploration there off the Wild Coast, they are against the development of the province, and they want to deconstruct the economy of the countries. Actually, the economic hub now is Gauteng, your Cape Town, your Durban. How do we then strike this balance between the marine life and also the economy?
That's a very interesting statement coming from the minister, coming from the chairperson of the ruling party in this country. All these years, what the ANC was fighting about was the emancipation of the people of this land. When the Freedom Charter said people shall govern, it was all about listening to the people and making sure that people. So, and colonialism was about extracting.
Just my apologies there. We just need to wrap too quickly to go inside the court. Sorry about that. That was the one of the applicants in this court case. We're just going to quickly go inside the court. We'll actually be bringing some of the visuals inside there. Today we're expecting the senior counsel from Africa Impact Group, one of the companies that was outsourced by Shell, to continue with their arguments. Yesterday we've heard that they were saying that they are quite correct in utilizing newspapers to publish the notice there, as they were only the form of medium that was able to reach some of these communities that are going to be affected by this planned exploration. Back to you in studio.